Hey y'all, I'm back. This is part 2 of my video talking about my grief and loss journey, mental health journey, and just the things that I've been through over the past 4 years. The first video was quite long, and I'm going to try to film this second part now. I've just finished filming the first, and I'm hoping to go ahead and finish filming the second part. It's hard not to get long-winded, and I just hope there's enough space storage that I can continue the story. So if this video is new, if you haven't watched the other one, please go back and watch the other one. It'll just put into context a lot of what I'm going to talk about here. I just began sharing my story on there about my mental health struggles and just my grief journey, my loss, and we talked about how 4 years ago I found out my husband was involved in an affair, and just a lot of the things that happened related to that. And when I closed out the last video, I ended with we had gotten to around Thanksgiving, which was 2 days before my husband passed, and I mentioned we were quarantined at the time. And so that day, it was a relatively good day. I know he was depressed, but we spent a lot of time together. He was very much an outdoors kind of guy. He loved weaponry and guns and knives, and he was very much that outdoorsy man type of guy. And so he had this. We spent a lot of the day. We had actually started reading Little House on the Prairie like a few week or so before he died, and we would read like a chapter every night together, me and him. And we had read the chapter about Pa. There's a chapter in Little House, the first one, the Little House in the Big Woods, where it talks about Pa taking, Laura just talks about how Pa took down his black powder gun and he cleaned it and he made the bullets for it, and how he would load it. And she went through all these descriptions. And so we were reading that. And so then he had this old gun that hung on the wall. That was a black powder rifle. And he went through and was like showing me, demonstrating all the details to me, and it was interesting, honestly. So on Thanksgiving, we went out and we shot the gun, and it was an interesting day. He cooked out on his grill. He had a smoker, and he smoked the grilled out on the grill, and it was a good day. It was different, and of course there was a sadness and a tension that was there, but it was still a good day. And the day after Thanksgiving, we went Black Friday shopping, and again, it was kind of we had tense moments throughout the day, but we enjoyed getting to shop for the kids. And he had to work that night, and so we lived not very far from town, and so he would come home at night and eat supper, and while he was working. And so, we spent some time together again, and we read Little House on the Prairie. And the next morning, that night was just a difficult one for me. I had gotten to where I was sleeping on the couch whenever he was at work, just because it was, I don't know, I just couldn't really, it was depressing to me to sleep in the bed. So I remember laying on the couch. I think I was watching YouTube videos. We had the Christmas tree up, and laying there and crying like a baby, just not knowing where my life was headed, what was gonna be next. And I had just really worked myself up into I was just depressed and broken. And so he got home that morning. He got off work and came home, and he went to bed. And I had written a letter. I had typed up an email that I was going to send to his boss, and he worked for a very small police force. They were very close. And he had basically told his boss and the other officers that he was not living the life that he had claimed to live for so many years before them as a chaplain and as a pastor, and he had given up his chaplain duties. But they didn't know. He had not told them what exactly was going on. And I had really gotten to a point, looking back now, I know I had gotten to a point of desperation, and there was a part of me that hoped if I forced his hand into letting his boss know that it would end the situation that was going on, because the circumstance between him and this woman was, I knew his boss was not going to fire him. I knew he wouldn't. I knew that it would probably be like, well, this can't happen anymore. Don't let this go on anymore in town. This has got to stop. But I knew he wouldn't fire him. I mean, it was a very close department, very small. There was like maybe 4 officers, maybe 6. I don't remember. It wasn't a lot. Very small, tight knit, and basically, his boss he told me his boss had become like a dad to him, and I think there was a part of him that really just didn't want to confess it because he was ashamed of it. And so, anyway, I had told him, I wrote up this email. I typed up this email and I sent it to Clay, and I was like, I want you to read this. I'm going to email this to your boss because he needs to know what's going on. He needs to know that this has happened, and it's been happening while you were on duty, and it's been happening in town, and if something happens and someone in town finds out about this and it comes out any other way, then it's going to be a lot worse than if we just go ahead and talk to him about it right now. And looking back, I know there was a part of me, I really thought, okay, this is going to solve the situation. I'm going to email him, and then he will put a stop to it, and he'll be like, look, this can't go on anymore, and he'll stop. I sent the letter to Clay, and later on in the day, he read it, and we talked about it, and I remember just bawling my eyes out at one point. I went in there, and he was asleep. He had been asleep. He was just laying in the bed, and I went and I laid down and just laid on top of him and cried and cried and cried because I felt so broken, and I didn't know what to do to fix it. And we had a lot of discussion about the letter, and it was a point of contention between us because he was like, look, let's just go talk about it in person to him. Don't send the letter, don't send the email, we'll talk about it in person. And there was just a part of me that was like, no, I'm going to send it. I don't want to talk about it in person. I was afraid that, part of me was afraid that he was going to misconstrue things and, turn it around and make it seem different than what it was. And then there was just that part of me that was like, I want to get this over with. I want this to be dealt with. I want life to move on. I want this to end. And I did not send it. There was that part of me that I said I was going to send it, but then, I don't know. That's one of the things that I look back on. I felt so much guilt about that, and we got into that discussion, and we had talked about that, and just kind of went back and forth about it. I remember telling him how much I loved him, but I didn't know what else to do, and I felt like, I was at a loss for what else to do. And he was supposed to go and work early that day, and I remember telling him, I asked him what time did he have to leave, and he told me, and he had like a few minutes before he had to get ready, and so I was like, well, I'm going to go. Our house, one end of the house had we called it our library. It was a former garage that had been converted and closed in, and so we had turned it into like where we put our books, and our library, our instruments and everything was down there. And it was at the opposite end of the house, and I was like, well, I'm going to go down here and work out here for a little bit. I was trying to go through some books and stuff, and probably about 15 minutes after our conversation ended was when he took his life. And my world at that point just totally, I thought my life had been upended before, and then at that point it was like, it's hard to even describe. It's just a very traumatic event, going into there and hearing the gunshot and running in and finding him, and just that part of me as a nurse that knew there was no hope. He wasn't, I knew he was, there was no reviving him. But then at the same time, you're just hoping for EMS to get there, and you're like waiting for them because you're like, please get here and do something. And so it was horrible. I remember just feeling so much guilt and brokenness, and like telling him I was sorry, and as I'm in there trying to call 911 and like talking to him and telling him I'm sorry. And I remember my mother-in-law telling me, look, because I was like, he was upset, and she was like, you're not going to blame yourself for this. And I struggled with guilt for a long time. God gave me peace in the weeks afterwards. God gave me a peace and a knowledge that Clay is with him. I know that Clay made peace with God. God gave me, it wasn't just he spoke to me, but then also other people. There was multiple things that happened. A sermon that was preached by someone that did not even know our family. I never met at all. There was confirmation through other people that spoke words to me that God had already spoken, like the exact same words. So I know that in that moment, he made his peace with God. I know that he made his peace with God in those last moments that he had, and that God gave him grace. And I know that's hard for people to understand, and it feels like, I know people probably think that's just a cop-out, but I know God spoke it to me. I know the multiple ways he gave me peace about this. I know he told me that my husband was not suffering anymore and that he was at peace. He gave those exact words to someone else and that told me the exact same thing. And I know he's at peace now. And I know that part of me that looks back and I wish for him to be here, raising his kids and us living life together. But there's also that part of me that knows that he's in heaven now. And if all of these things that happen, all of these circumstances, I don't ever believe, and this is a hard thing. I understand it, but I think it's hard for me to explain it in a way that other people will understand. I don't believe that his suicide was God's will. I don't believe that was God's will at all. However, I believe that God used the circumstances to get Clay to that place of repentance and bring him back to God, restore his relationship with God. You know, God used it. That's what I believe, that there's circumstances like that are in no way God's will, but God uses them to answer our prayers and answer, my plea with God had been that Clay would find his way back to God. And, I was pleading that our marriage would be restored, but also that his relationship with God would be restored. And I believe in those moments it was. And he's in heaven now. And I don't know if he was still here, what would our life be like now? Would he have turned his life to God? Would that relationship have been restored if he was still here? Would there have been healing? That just began a long journey, though, because I thought, God, I'm already grieving a broken marriage. I'm grieving the loss of a marriage that I thought was fabulous. I'm grieving the dreams that we had together. We wanted to raise a big family. We wanted to grow old together. We were wanting to become, even more active in ministry as we were. And all of this was crushed, and I walked out of my house that day, never to stay another night in that home. I ended up staying with my in-laws for 6 months and sold my home, had a baby. Life was, for lack of better words, it was insane. It was insane in those few months, and just a lot of dark days. But there was the points of hope that I can point back to, and I can realize, like I said earlier, God gave us those last weeks before he died. I think I talked about this in my last video, where we had hours-long conversations, talked about so many things. We shared and opened up with each other in ways we had never before. We were honest, and we shared beautiful moments together. God gave us grace. He gave us grace, even in the middle of all the hurting. So many little things I can look back to and think, God, you did that for me. You did that for us. You did that just for me, so I would not have to live the rest of my life tormented. And one of those things is that he told me a few days before he died that on multiple occasions he had done like Russian roulette with his gun. One of the times was before he even told me about the affair. This was after we had gone on a date night, and he told me that in the bathroom at my parents' house, we were picking up our kids, that he did Russian roulette with his gun. And then he did it again later on, the night that he confessed to our pastor. And I know beyond a shadow of a doubt that in both of those instances, God spared his life. I look back and I think, God, if he had passed in those moments, we wouldn't have got those last few weeks together. I would not have got all the answers that I got. I would have been absolutely tormented with the endless questions and confusion and wondering what had happened. God gave me those last few weeks, and he spared his life, and he kept us with it a while longer, kept him with us a while longer. And I know that God was there in those moments. And it's been a journey that truly has helped me see the grace of God in ways that I've never seen it. And it's been a journey that I've walked some roads. I've walked through bitterness. I had never truly fought bitterness and anger until like, genuinely, I hated the other woman. I absolutely hated her. I had tremendous church hurt from where the church had told him he couldn't go back to church. There were people that church leaders, not in our church directly, but so the church that we went to had several other churches that were affiliated with, and there was a larger governing body, and the church leaders, one of the ones, some of the ones that he actually confessed to, never reached out to us after his death, never sent a card, never called me, never visited, never, even to this day, have not reached out. And the hurt that caused, it was like, there's something about church hurt because I feel like it's because you expect more from a Christian. I can honestly say, God helped me forgive the other woman. Like, I got to that point, he helped me forgive her, absolutely. He gave me that forgiveness. He did it. He had to do it. But the church hurt is something that I struggle with to this day. I had gotten to the point last year that I genuinely thought I had given it all to God and that he helped me through that. But in the last few months, I've felt it coming back up in my heart, and it's something that I have to keep praying God help me with, because there's certain ones, there's other people that they did reach out, and there's some people that did reach out, some people that did, I understand better, but then there's other ones in the situation, other leaders that did not ever reach out, and it was so painful. These were people that were like our family, people that were so important in our lives, a part of our lives, and so it was incredibly painful that they did not reach out. And so every part of the journey, there's been something different, a different circumstance that we had to work through. And even now there's new things as I've talked about recently on my Instagram. I've talked about it, that we're in a new grief journey right now, because my 5-year-old is beginning to realize that he doesn't have a dad. And just the other week, he cried for the first time, broke down in tears, and it broke my mama heart. It was so hard, because I know I can't fix it for him. And he literally broke down crying because he had asked me if you pray enough, will they come back out of the grave? Your parent, the person that you the person that you lost, will they come back out of the grave? And he said he had been praying that, and he broke down in tears because I had to tell him no. And we had a conversation about that, and it hurt so bad. And so that's a new aspect to the grief journey that I'm on now. But I can say God has given me grace in the middle of all of this. He's helped me to realize how good he's been to me. He kept me in the middle of it. He gave me, constantly, even when I was, I lived with my in-laws for 6 months, and then I lived with my parents for about 6 months, and then I bought a camper and stayed in their backyard for about a year, and then I lived in an apartment for about a year, and then I bought this house, and I've been in this house for over a year now, and it was very just tumultuous, not knowing where I was going to end up next, and not at first, I never thought I would live by myself again. It was just, it was just, it was like, will I ever live alone again? I was dealing with so much pain and loss and loneliness and fear and anxiety. And I know God got me to the point where I'm at today, where I can live here, and He's helped me raise my kids. I had someone tell me at one point early on that I don't think you'll be able to manage on yourself with your kids, being by yourself with your kids. I just don't think you'll manage. And by God's grace, He has helped me and brought me to this place that I've been. There's days I get so overwhelmed. There's days that I probably act like a mad woman. I get triggered and frustrated and overwhelmed and overstimulated, and I have to ask God, please help me. Please give me grace. Please help me to have the attitude of Jesus and not fly off the handle and be angry and short-tempered. But it has been Jesus every step of the way, who has carried me on this journey, who's given me life and peace and joy. And I've had to just continually turn to Him, continually ask Him to be my everything in the lonely moments and the moments when I'm tired and afraid and wanting, just lonely as a mom. Most of my time is spent with kids. I don't have a lot of one-on-one time with adults until now that I've got my new job. I have a lot more, but so there's a lot of loneliness that I've had to grapple with, and just the hurt. And I'm not someone that opens up easily to let people into my life. I'm an introvert, and so it's been a process. Grief is definitely a journey, and there's ups and downs, and I found writing about it, like I said on my last video, to be very cathartic, very healing. I've had a lot of people, I can't even say how many times people have told me I should write a book. It's funny because growing up I hated writing, and now I love it. It's just become something to me that's, I don't know, I love it. So maybe one day I will, I don't know. Maybe one day I will, but it's become healing, and I just pray that God would continue to help me on this journey, because I know there's so much more I need to learn. I have to learn, and I want to be a blessing to someone and help someone else on their own journey. It's given me so much purpose to know that my story, my pain can help someone else. That's just given me purpose when a lot of, when you feel like you're, in those initial days, you just feel absolutely adrift, like this ship in the middle of the sea with no way, no course, no course to chart, no way to go. You have no idea where you're going next. And everything that I was a homemaker, and I did work part-time as a nurse, but not a lot. My hours were very few, and so my life was wrapped up in my husband. And so when I lost him, I felt like I just lost so much of, I had to really reassess my life and where am I headed now, and what's my future going to be like now, what are my goals now, what are my, at that point when you just want to give up, you don't feel like going on, but you eventually are like, I have my kids, I've got to pull myself together and eventually get to that place where I can raise my kids. And so it's a long process to get to that place where I could try to heal from the heartbreak, but also be a good mom and be who I needed to be for them. And so, but like I said, I continue to need to heal. And I honestly, if I'll be honest with you, I think to myself all the time, I need to see a therapist. I have not seen a therapist, and it has been my intention over the past 4 years to go see a therapist, and I haven't. It has felt like, as I talked about moving and we finally got settled here, and now I've got a job, and it's finally beginning to feel like I've started taking care of some of the things, like, doctor's appointments and different things that I've needed to be taken care of over the past few years. And so I hope and pray that soon I can. I think there's a fear to me about choosing the right therapist. I want to choose someone that's going to glorify God, a Christian therapist. But yeah, that's something that I could use y'all's prayers with. I could definitely use your prayers that God will guide me to the right therapist. I would love to see one just for all the trauma, and then also just my own mental health struggles. But definitely, I feel like sometimes I'm like, I need to talk to a therapist about this, because there's days when occasion there's times when the trauma feels like, it's fresh. It's a lot further and further in between now, but there's still days when it feels like that, and I thank God, have I just buried it all, and have I really healed? You question all these things, but I know that there's a lot God has healed in me, and there's so much that He's healed and helped inside me, and so many things that He has done for me. The outpouring of love I was shown after Clay died. I mean, there were so many donations. I was able to pay for his funeral through all of that, because so many people just poured out their love to us and their love for Clay, because Clay was a special person, very special. He was so well loved. It was a huge loss for the community. His funeral was like, it was so packed. People said that at his graveside there was, I think I had several people tell me they've never seen that many people at a graveside service, and so it was definitely a testament to what a special person he was. And if that's one thing I want you to take away from this video, I definitely want you to take away, most important, the goodness of God, but also that I don't want you to take away a bad perspective of him, because when I share my story and when I share these things, for a long time I did not share. I know there was rumors and there was conversations and people knew what had happened, but it was probably over a year after he passed that I finally got to the place where I could begin sharing more details. But when I share, it's never with the intent to make him look bad. And I can share with a perspective, from my perspective, like I talked about earlier or on the other video, of having grace and knowing that I could have made the same decisions. And so I know that in my heart when I share, but I know not everybody feels that way. And so when I share, it's with that, I want you to know that if you genuinely knew him, he was a fabulous guy. He was very loving. He loved kids. There's a video I have of him where he worked as a school resource officer, like filling in from time to time. And there's a video I have of him playing out ball on the fields with the kids. And the kids loved him. He was he loved teaching very much. He loved he had a wealth of knowledge. He had a really great memory. Like, he can remember stuff really well. And so he loved sharing his knowledge with others. I talked about how he loved, he enjoyed like weaponry and guns and shooting and things like that, the manly things. And so he loved sharing that knowledge with other people. He was a fabulous teacher. He taught Sunday school at our church, and he was awesome at teaching Sunday school. He was a very compassionate guy. Very, had a huge heart for helping others. I just wish, as I share about my story, that y'all could see, that y'all knew the man that he once was, the man that he was before he made the bad choices, and before he let the darkness grab his heart and take hold in his heart. But I knew that man was there underneath all the pain and the heartbreak and the brokenness. That was the man that I loved, that I had grown to love. And he was just a very special person. Very special. I had a lot of people reach out to me after he passed and just talk about what an impact he had on their lives. A lot of people on Facebook, messaged me that he had such an impact on their lives, the kindness that he showed them. He was one of those people that would reach out to the people that he would reach out to the people that other people might reject, and like the other people that he would reach out to, the people that others might turn away or might shun, the ones that are not the popular kids or not the popular people. He reached out to those people that other people might overlook. He loved his kids very, very much. I remember the week that we went to West Virginia and we had we were just, in the first week or so after everything had come out, and we were both so broken. He was working and I was broken, and I was not even able to get out of my bed and feed myself. Our kids ended up staying with my in-laws for like that whole week, and at the end of the week when they came home, he was so excited to see them. He talked about how he was just, he loved them so much. They were his world, and although, I wish he was here to see him. And like, that's just the thing that I don't want people to take away from this. I don't want them to have, I don't want them to judge his whole life based on the stupid decisions he made in his last few months. And I think sometimes we do that, and it's just something that we have to remember. You can't judge someone and just erase everything good they've ever done and erase the person that they are because of stupid decisions that they made. But thank you guys for sticking with me this far. It's another long video. Thank y'all for watching, and I feel like there's so much I didn't even say on these videos that I could say. I feel like there's so much I didn't share that I could share, and sometimes it's hard for me to get my words out. That's one reason I like writing, because I can edit and finagle the words, and so I get them, and they're just arranged in a way that says what I want to say. But I'm not always the greatest speaker. I'm not always the greatest at expressing my thoughts, but I hope something I've said will help you. And I want to share a verse that God really gave me and comforted me with after Clay passed. John chapter 12 and verse 24. Truly, truly, I say to you, unless a grain of wheat falls into the earth and dies, it remains alone. But if it dies, it bears much fruit. Whoever loves his life loses it, and whoever hates his life in this world will keep it for eternal life. And I think that verse just gave me so much peace in knowing that Clay's death was not going to be without purpose. And though his death in the way that he died was not God's will, it was still come forth with a purpose, and God would use it. God would use that circumstance to bear fruit in my life and in the lives of people that Clay touched, the lives of all those that he had affected. And I know that, I look at that, I think, just as a grain of wheat, there's a single grain. Clay was a single life, but though his life has ended, it has an impact on so many people around him. It continues to have an impact, and God has used that. He's used his death in my life to impact others. He's used his life and his death to impact others. And so his life is not a single flame that's been blown out and like a candle blown out. It's not that at all. It's been like that grain of wheat that goes into the ground, and then it brings forth a huge harvest. I know that's how Clay's life has been, how it is, how it continues to be. His death has caused and continues to cause, and I pray I will continue to allow to produce a harvest in me, and just allow God to use me to touch lives, allow God to work through me to touch others' lives. And so I'm just thankful for you guys for listening. If you've watched this far, thank you for listening. I'm sorry, I know I've been long-winded. But thank y'all for watching and listening, and I pray that this has helped you in some way, or that it can encourage you. And I just pray that each of you would trust in the Lord fully. Just let the Lord work in your life. Trust Him. It's hard. I know. I've been there. I've been there. I've been in those moments when I thought, God, how can I trust you? I just want my marriage restored. I just want this done and that done, and I just want this fixed, and I want him back, and I want my husband to love me again. And in the middle of it all, God was calling me to him, to trust him, because his love will never betray me. He will never walk away. His love will remain faithful till the end. His love will remain faithful through all eternity. He will remain faithful, and His love is the truest and purest. And when my heart and my soul and my body and my spirit are craving, the affection, the attention, the love of a person, another man, as we do, we long for that communion and that relationship, I can remind myself, Jesus first, Jesus first, Jesus above all else. When I'm craving the things of the world to satisfy me, when I'm reaching and pulling and trying to find something to satisfy that void inside, that loneliness, even if it's not necessarily something wrong. I mean, it may not even be something wrong, but we can feel ourselves so full of those things, and then we're still empty. We're still empty because Jesus is not the one that we're leaning on. Jesus is not the one that we're looking to for satisfaction. And so I want to just let Him fill me and satisfy me every single day. Thank you guys for watching. I pray that you let Jesus satisfy you and let Him fill every part of your heart, all the crevices, all the corners of your heart, that He will fill you and fill you with so much joy in Him. Thank you guys for watching. Love you all. Bye.